Hey in church, unfortunately, I had an oopsie and did not put the mics on my parents for the message. So the first 10 minutes or so of what they shared, we didn't catch. And then the audio is a little bit tinny after that, but thankfully we were able to catch the rest of it. And so hope you guys enjoy it. That first point really was just about that you can be united without being uniform. And you can choose to do things that honor the other person, even if you don't necessarily agree. And so I would encourage you guys, if you have questions for them, in week 4 of this series, we're gonna have an opportunity to submit those questions. And so go online, submit the Connect card, and write any questions you have for them. And then in week number 4, if you have any questions, they're gonna take some time and answer those. We'll see you guys next week.
In your parenting. And so for this tip, being in unity and not uniformity will show itself we had 5 kids, and we still do, we're still alive. We have 5 kids, and a common answer they would get when they came to ask something of us, whether it was a sleepover or they got a treat or something, we would always say, what did your mom say? Or she would say, what did your dad say? Because we didn't want to undermine the other person and what they said, or had they said something earlier, for instance, and then they were checking back to see if the rule still applied or something like that. And so if we weren't in the same room where we could check with each other, we would put it on them to say, well, what were you told already? And that's a way that we had unity, and the way that we parented our household and the rules that we had was that we respected each other. We didn't go behind each other's back or say, yeah, this time you can have this treat, but don't tell your mom. Those words didn't exist in our house because we were together. We were in unity.
And they knew that everything about, if you're going to tell mom, dad's going to find out. There was no, hey, I'm going to tell you, mom, but don't tell dad. In fact, we would take it so far as, not only am I going to tell dad, you're going to tell dad. You're going to tell him, and I'm going to stand here with you and hold your hand while we do it, but we're going to tell it together. Because what that also did was it created unity within, as a family unit of, we're all in this together. It's not me and dad against each other. We didn't have different rules when mom was home or when dad was home. Yet it wasn't uniform either.
Well, I was a lot funner.
He was. That's the truth. He's still the more fun one. All the grandkids know it. They walk in like, Grandpa, give us Skittles. Like, he is the fun one. But that's what makes us beautiful. I don't have to be him for my kids to think I'm fun. They know, hey, dad's going to be more fun, but mom's going to have dinner. Mom's going to have real food. Mom's going to get the house clean. Mom's going to make sure we're okay. It's okay to be different. And it's okay that when I wasn't there, he ran it one way. But he didn't ever do anything that was against me or that they had to hide from me. And there were lots of rules that were important to him. Like the biggest one was, this is back in the day. I don't even know if our kids will even remember it. But back when kids used to watch videos and DVDs, he did not want the kids touching the DVDs. He was like, they'll ruin it, don't let them touch them. I was like, I'm trying to keep 5 kids and a dog alive, and you want me to pay attention to who touches the DVD? But it was important to him, so I held the rule. And what that taught our kids was, hey, mom's got dad's back before she has my back. And even as adults, they respect us. They don't talk bad about, they don't come to me and go, dad's this, and they don't go to their mom. But at the same time, if they have a problem with one of us, they can come to us and say, I'm struggling with this with dad. And I'll say, okay, how can I help you talk to him? Because they know that's where we're going. You're chasing unity, not uniformity.
Crouching tiger, hidden dragon incident came to mind.
That was one that was a bit of a fight, actually. Because I went away and I called, I think I was visiting my parents. And I called and said, what are you doing with the kids? Mind you, our oldest was maybe 8. And he goes, we're watching Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I'm like, you're watching kung fu movies with our children? It was a fight. That didn't happen again, though. All right. Tip number 2.
Okay, so tip number 2 is your spiritual life or your spiritual walk. That was something that was at the forefront of what we did and something that we modeled. And Matthew just did a series on the Shema, which is out of Deuteronomy 6. And this is how we parented our children. When we saw this in the Word, it resonated in our spirit, and that's exactly how we ran our lives and how we ran our household. And even when people would ask us, what's your secret? what is it you guys did differently? What is it? We would always tell them, oh, it's real simple. It's in the Word. We just follow Deuteronomy 6. So I'm going to read that again. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, and when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates. That is the biblical secret to having a healthy family, healthy parenting, and a healthy home. Because when we follow the Lord and we do it His way, and we walk in His ways and we think about His ways, and we wear them on our home and we wear them on our head, and that's what's on our mind, then we're going to be in His will. And you're going to get the blessings that come with that.
I think one thing that culture is trying to tell parents today is that you don't have what it takes to teach your kids about God. But here's the thing. God is not a secret, and your relationship with the Lord should not be a secret from your children. They should see you when you're on your highs and when you're on your lows. You should be reading your Bible, not, oh, look at Mom, I'm reading my Bible. It should be part of your daily life. When it's part of your daily life, they're going to see you. All 5 of my kids will say, yep, I mostly remember you sitting in the chair with the light on, reading the Bible when I walked down the stairs. I wasn't doing that so that they would see me. I was doing it to be connected to the Lord, but they saw me be connected to the Lord. You have what it takes. And it is time to stop believing the world when it's like, oh, if you talk too much to your kids about God, they're going to turn from you. They're going to turn from God if you're a hypocrite. They're not going to turn from God if they watch you seek Him diligently, if they watch you love Him and succeed and make mistakes. And we made plenty of mistakes, plenty of things that we did wrong that we had to say, hey, we're sorry, we messed that up.
So that brings up transparency. And we've always tried to be transparent with our kids. We tried to let them learn from our mistakes, from our life. We tried to let them learn from our daily mistakes that we would make all the time. One thing that we would do is when we'd had, once the kids had gone to sleep, we'd have some time together and we'd reflect and talk about the day. And oftentimes that would consist of whatever dumb thing I did, she would point out to me, and it would, I would hear it from another perspective or see it differently, and it would affect my heart. And I realized I did something to wound my kids, and it killed me. I wanted to go and wake them up and hug them and tell them I'm sorry and I love them. And I usually reserved that for the next day, where I would correct a behavior that I did or a wound that I had caused them and would apologize to them. And they would see that, both because it's something that I modeled and then also because then I would put into practice. And she would do the same.
And one of the things that's really important that you need to do as a parent is you know what your husband and wife's triggers are. And as our kids, especially when they started becoming adolescents and they get a little bit mouthy, and they can talk back to you a little bit. If you're not careful and you're walking your own freedom journey. It's the first time we were parents. We hadn't done it before. And we had 5 kids in 6 years. So they were all going through it at the same time. Like we'd get through one and the next one is doing the same thing that one just did. So we instituted something one day just talking about, okay, how can we help each other stay calm? And so we had a code word so that if one of us was getting a little too heated, we just look at each other and say, hey, pineapple. I'm not going to call you out in front of the kids because that would be disrespectful. But I'm also not going to just let you go crazy and lose your temper. And so our code word meant, hey, we've talked about this. You're losing your temper. Go to the other room. And we would both respect each other with that. Another thing that we would do is if we were rude to each other in front of the kids, apologize to each other in front of the kids. I think that that's something that a lot of parents miss out on. If you want to talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, just absolutely. If we got angry and I raised my voice at Kim, then she would tell me, hey, that hurt my feelings, or you were wrong, and you need to be able to admit that. And it would take a minute, and I would come around and I would admit it or apologize. And then I would go do the same thing in front of the children because I embarrassed her. I yelled at her in front of the kids. I then needed to model that I was wrong and I needed to ask for forgiveness, and she would give me forgiveness in front of the kids. So that way we didn't build a household where they, saw me mistreating her or saw her undermining me. Even though those things may have happened, there was correction that they saw as well. So they saw that the behavior wasn't, a permanent thing or a secret thing that then we just don't talk about anymore.
And we didn't hide every single fight. We didn't have big blow-ups in front of the kids, but we didn't hide our fights from the kids. You have to train your children how to interact with each other, how to have a healthy disagreement. And it was, the early years of our marriage, being 17 and 18, it wasn't real pretty, but it got better and better, although you should have ground rules. And this should always be, you never name call, and you never use a wound that you know is in their heart as ammunition to get what you want from your spouse. That is a terrible way to fight, and all you are doing is isolating yourself from their heart. And what you really want is connection, and ultimately you're putting spikes in the vest, and they're not going to come near you, because if the last time I shared my heart with you, you just used that against me in a fight, I'm not giving you something again. So if you struggle with that, make a point to make a decision. I'm not going to do low blows to my spouse. That way, it also helps your kids not do low blows to each other if they don't see you do that with your spouse.
And the last thing on transparency, we, as she said, we met when we were teenagers. We got pregnant with our first son. We actually got pregnant before that, and we miscarried. Then we got pregnant with our first son, and before we were married, we were still both in high school. And then we got married, and we decided that we would tell him the truth when it was age appropriate. So I think it was 12 for Gabriel.
Probably
12 or 10, one of those two numbers. We took him out, and we got a babysitter, and we took him out, and we shared the truth with him. And
worst day of our life.
it absolutely was. When your 12-year-old looks at you and his response is, "You guys were my heroes," and we were crushed. Like, how could you?
It was awful. And we actually had a long talk about this when we were planning this. And in terms of transparency, if we could do that thing different, we would have just let that been a part of our life. And I think in our effort, especially mine, coming from such a disjointed childhood, I wanted them to grow up not knowing the hard things. I didn't want to hide it from them, but I didn't want their little childhood, their young childhood, to be built on anything other than joy, and mom is happy, and dad is home, and everything's okay. In hindsight, absolutely would have just let that been part of the fabric of his birth. You were in mommy's tummy before we got married, because it was hard on every one of our kids. Because we did it that way, yeah, Alan's shaking his head, it was hard.
And then Alan got the story, then Nicole got the story, but the trickle-down effect, I don't think Owen got the same, go out and share the story. Matthew, of course, I know.
Yeah, Matthew, actually, we told him.
It's like, I can do math.
When we told Matthew, he said, well, our friend's kid was born before they were married. You're not the only ones. He was like, no big deal. It was so much better by number 5, but number 1 was rough. Anyways, be transparent with your kids. Tell them the truth. They will respect you so much more if they see the things that are wrong than if you pretend to be perfect and then they hit 22 and then you magically think, now they can handle the fact that I did something bad. Absolutely not. They're going to respect you if all along you say, hey, I can help you because I went the wrong way. But then you got to do hands off. You've got to trust that the Lord has your children.
So one last area we want to talk about before we go to point number 3 is spiritual warfare. The amount of prayer that you put into your family, that you put into your spouse, that you put into your children, that you put into your children's future spouse is absolutely critical, and can't state that enough. Ephesians 6:12 tells us, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Now, if God's word is true, and we believe it is, if our struggle is not against flesh and blood, then the majority of the fights that you have is not really about the differences you may have or a problem with your spouse. Yes, there are things that you may need to work out or compromise on. I'm not saying that. But if at the root of everything, it's not against flesh and blood, then that means the enemy is at play. And the enemy is trying to steal and kill and destroy, according to John 10:10. And so if he's trying to create a divide in your marriage, then he's going to win that battle if he can divide you. You know, the Bible tells us that what God has put together, no one should separate. And that's the enemy's plan, is to steal, kill, and destroy, to separate you. If we weren't married for 33 years, if we had gotten a divorce, then how would that affect our legacy? How would it affect our 5 children? How would it affect our 13 grandchildren? Would not be the same story. My parents have been together for 65 years. And they have, there's over 100 children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren in their family line. And we're continuing that. If we allow the enemy to come in and steal from us and to steal our legacy, then we're going to have a very different story and a very different generation that we're leaving behind us. And so it's important to focus your attention on your real enemy. Yes, there's things that your wife will do to get under your skin, or there's things that I'll do to get under her skin. And that's a normal part of 2 people working together and living together for their lives. But if you focus on who the real enemy is, then you'll stop focusing on so many of those little things like toothpaste and toilet paper and shoes and all those type of things, and you'll start to face your actual enemy, and you can team up together and do it versus being on opposite sides. And so again, just praying for your children, praying for your spouse, and praying for the future.
So I want to just touch on this just quickly in terms of praying for your kids. Recently, one of the girls asked me, what's one thing you would do differently as a mom? And I said, one thing I really regret is I underestimated what the enemy was doing to my children's mind. We want to think of children as innocent, and like most people won't harm children. Satan is not most people. He does not care that your child's 1, 2, or 3. He will attack at any moment. He will attack with beliefs. He will attack with things that you say that you think mean nothing. The enemy is there twisting it to hurt our children. And so I want to encourage all of you, even if you don't have children yet or your children are grown, do not neglect praying for them. You will do more in your prayers for them than you will in anything else that you can do. And a lot of you heard Julia's testimony a couple weeks ago when she spoke, and something that the Lord really poured on my heart. All of my children, but it's very evident in Julia's life. I prayed for their spouses from the day each of my child were born. And so when she says she didn't know why she was protected, I know she was protected because I was praying for her every day. So you have the power to affect somebody's life that you might not meet for 20 years, for 10 years, for however long. Pray for them. Pray for your children to be a good spouse. Pray for their spouse to be protected and prepared for your children.
And so just to address some of the things here, if you don't have children, if you're not married, if you're single, if you're divorced, God's mercies are new every morning. And it's because of His grace that we all get to walk every day in newness. And so this is an area that we can share with you, the things that we know, the things that we've learned. But these things can also be applied to other areas of your life, other family members, other nieces and nephews that you may have a chance to mentor, or even, Boys and Girls Clubs, things like that. There's always things that you can take in and learn, even if you're not in the same season, or even if your life isn't like ours, or it's not in that place. There's always things that we can learn from what the Lord is doing in other people. And that's part of the power that we walk in as our testimony.
All right, we gotta speed it up here. Tip number 3, learn your children. This one is really for the parents in the house. First?
Yeah.
First.
Proverbs 22:6 says, raise them, I'm sorry.
Yep.
That's,
Right.
okay. I was worried that was the AI version. We had fed some things into AI to make it a little simpler questions. Well, they love to change Bible verses. And we're like, okay, raise them in the way they should go. When they are old, they will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6. That's kind of a life verse as a parent. It's very important to raise your children in the way they ought to go, not the way you want them to go.
And not the way you wish your life would have gone. I think that is the thing that happens so often. We have kids and we have regrets in our own lives, and we look at our kids and we're like, oh, I didn't get to go to college, you have to go to college. And I'm saying that one because that was my thing that I had to break off. We have to raise them in the way that they should go. One of the ways that you can really do that is pay attention when they're little. If you will pay attention, you can figure out their love language, you can figure out their learning style. I waited far too long to even think about that. It came to me when our son Owen was 4 years old. He was a hard child. He was busy. He was smart. He was the real truth on this side of life is he was very smart, and it came out in curiosity, and I did not know how I would keep him alive. And I'm not exaggerating. I would be in tears at the end of every day. How will I keep this child alive? And the poor kid got more spankings. One time we went on a trip with his parents, and he just kept getting in trouble to the point that Daniel's mom, who never gave me an opinion, never criticized anything, goes, honey, I don't think he's hearing you. Turned out he actually did have hearing loss. But anyways, on his 4th birthday, we were teasing him, and I said, hey, Owen, you got to get your 4 spankings. You got to get your 4 birthday spankings. And I was in his bedroom getting his clothes, and he walked in, and with such articulation, he looked at me, and he said, Mommy, when you spank me, it makes my brain so angry. And it was a light bulb moment for me. Nothing I was doing was working because I was trying to do what worked on the first 3 kids. And it wasn't working with him. It was provoking him to anger. See, as Christians, we all like to say that verse, honor your mother and father. Nobody likes the second sentence, which is, and parents, don't provoke your children. I was provoking him. Every time I was spanking him, and the reason it was is because his love language was touch. And I firmly believe that when you are speaking to somebody in the opposite love language, it's not neutral. It comes as hate. So for him, every time I was spanking him, he was taking that as hate. It wasn't correction. And that doesn't mean that I needed to remove the rod of discipline. The child needed discipline. But I had to change the rod I was using. So he had to start sitting on his hands on his bed. But I'll tell you what, it changed. It absolutely changed. So then spankings were only reserved every once in a while. And they were much more effective. Everything about raising him got better when the Lord showed me that. So pay attention to what your individual child needs. It doesn't have to be fair or equal. And my kids used to say, that's not fair. And I'd say, take it up with God. Life isn't. It's not my job to be the executor of fairness. It's my job to train you in the way you should go. And when I get to heaven, God isn't going to say to me, well, it's okay that you did that to that one because you did it to Owen. He's going to say, but what did that child need? And that's what I'm going to be held accountable for. That's what we're all going to be held accountable for.
So again, on learning your children is knowing their giftings, knowing their learning styles, knowing their tendencies, and then working with them on those things. And part of the way that looks is like she explained with Owen, and part of the way that works is, being a little bendable and pliable in the way that you do things so that you can encourage your children and encourage them on the choices they make and the path that they take. So, most of my kids are all athletic and they want to do sports and things. And we always had a rule, we were going to support them in whatever they wanted to do. If it happened to be sports, fine. If it happened to be a particular sport, fine. If they changed their mind, no problem. We would have other rules we teach them, like if you commit to something, you're not going to quit. But we would encourage them whatever that was. And so my first son started out playing soccer like I did and like I liked. And then after 2 seasons, he was done. He didn't want to do that anymore. Well, if you know anything about us, we are a soccer family. All of us played soccer, sometimes all at the same time on the same team. And that was a regular thing that we did. But you can ask them, none of them ever felt obligated that that was their only choice. And with my oldest son, when he decided he didn't want to play sports, no problem. You don't need to play sports. And, you know, so if they want to do music, or if they want to do something in the arts, or whatever it is, support them in the things that they like to do, even if it's not natural or common for you, because it will help them and it will grow them in the way they ought to grow.
And lastly, we just really want to encourage everybody, no matter what season of parenting you're in. You know, all of our kids are adults and we haven't done this before, and so we're learning what that looks like. And my parents were...
It doesn't end parenting.
It doesn't end. Well, we joke too that there's things now that we're going through and we're like, oh, the kids won't understand this for 20 years. But in 20 years, the rate of return on this hard work is coming back for us. All that to say, no matter what season of life you're in with your children, whether they're adults, whether they're little, whether you don't have them yet, start praying for them. That is the most powerful thing that you can do for them. Encourage them in the gifts that they have. And have respect for your partner. Let them be who they are. Don't try to turn them into the father you think they should be or the mother that you think they should be.
Otherwise, they'll never have seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Okay, so that's what we've got. The last thing I did want to mention is just about our intentionality. In today's day and age with technology, we're all getting a ton of screen time, whether it's on our personal phones or iPads or computer or TV or whatever it is. And those things can be a great tool if you come together as a family and watch a family movie or do a tradition like that. That can be nice. But we have to be cognizant of that. And so spend time doing regular disciplines like a family meal together where phones aren't a part of it and where the TV isn't on and where you can look each other in the eyes and allow the natural things that the Lord created in us to come alive. And when you make that connection with your spouse, when you make that connection with your children, things start to roll in the way that God intended them to. And so it's just real important to be cognizant of those things and pay attention to that. And, you know, something to do is, like, say you're out with your family at a meal, you know, have a rule. No, nobody's going to be on their phones while we're having a meal together. And then look out across the restaurant and you'll see that's what everybody is doing. And you'll see the lack of connection between spouses, between children and their parents. And these are all things that we can guard against and protect against if we're intentional about them and if we make them a priority.
And on that note, one thing we did do as a family is every night we ate dinner together and we did high-low. And they would have to tell us the high part and the low part. And this was of their day. And this was kind of a rule that we had, and it went across the board, is that you were never allowed to say, I don't know, in our house. That was not an option. So I want to encourage all of you, especially with teenagers, but especially even if you have little kids, start now. Do not let them say, I don't know. Because when you do that, you are letting them live at the base level of who God has created them to be. And the person that we should know the most is ourselves. And so it is your job as their parent to help them know, hey, you do know how you feel. And you have the right to say how you feel, how it makes you feel, and what you need. And coming from the dysfunction I came from, when he would say to the kids, I don't know isn't an answer, I would cringe. I would be like, the awkward silence is killing me. Awkward silence. He doesn't know awkward silence because it's not awkward to him. And I would start to answer for them, and he would always put his hand on me and say, don't answer for them. Let them answer. And now, as adults, all 5 of them know how they feel. They know how to advocate for themselves. So it may seem like a really small detail, but if you will force your children to tell you what they feel, and I don't mean in a mean, cruel way, but in a, hey, it's safe here. Tell me. You do know. I believe in you. You will set them up for success in all of their relationships in their life. All right.
All right. Last thought I had was something that we didn't talk about or address at all, and I'm not going to go deep into it now, but I'll bring it up for question's sake or because we can talk about it in other areas, is sex. And something that we don't want to allow the enemy to do is to take something that the Lord created as beautiful and turn it into what we see in today's day and age. And so the best thing that we can do is expose it to the light. And so that's a quick reminder in case you have any questions or anything related to that, then you can send it in and we'll talk about those things in the 4th week. We're not scared.
Well, consent shouldn't ever be used as a weapon or an obligation. It's a blessing, and you need to look at it as such.
All right.